They say if you don't know your history, you're destined to repeat it. Same rings true when there were good times we should all remember and try to replicate. Joining us on this Money Monday is Patrick Huey. He has many letters after his name, but he's also the owner of Victory Independent Planning. Thank you so much for joining us.
Of course, my pleasure.
Yeah, so you're a financial planner. What's the difference between a financial planner, advisor? Are they all the same?
You could say they're all the same. The Certified Financial Planner designation, one of those collection of letters after my name, is really the gold standard for folks who are working across disciplines. So it's not just investing, it's tax planning, it's working with charitable giving, it's really integrating a client's entire financial picture.
In order to do what you do, though, you need to know your history. And that's what we're here to talk about, is knowing the financial history of the world that we live in and how to use that to better plan for the future. So tell us a little bit about what goes into that. I mean, what are some historically significant moments that we should all be learning from?
Well, the way I like to look at this, and one of the reasons I wrote my book is, I have clients all across the country. And typically, there's one thread that ties them all together. And unfortunately, that's fear. When markets are up, people are afraid of what happens next and what happens if things collapse on them. Mm-hmm. And when markets are down, people worry about that they're going to get worse or they're going to stay down. So what I wanted to do and what I wanted to create with this book is a way to tell some stories to folks. I mean, if you think about when you were a child, your parents read you bedtime stories because you were afraid of the dark. Mm-hmm. And in this case, what we're trying to do is tell some stories to break through that fear, kind of get people listening, and then teach them something about finance that they may not have known already.
And you have written a couple of books. The one that we're talking about right now is called History Lessons for the Modern Investor.
Thank you.
Investing aside, though, I think we tend to forget our history very easily. Let's just take the Great Recession as an example. Mm-hmm. People lost their jobs, lost their homes. We were in dire straits there for a long time. But as soon as tides start to turn, things get better, the sun starts to shine once again, we're finding ourselves in credit card debt and we're making poor financial decisions. So if we could just take sort of that most recent event, how would we learn from that to then make better choices down the line?
Sure. I think you point out something very interesting, which is that we have short memories. Not just investors, but people in general have very short memories. And we tend to forget things that cause us pain. It's how we tend to move on with our lives. As an investor, that can be somewhat dangerous, obviously, because you make bad decisions when you're under pressure. You make bad decisions when you become emotional. And if I saw anything in 2008, as well as just last year with clients, it's the tendency to become emotional during those periods. A lot of what I talk about in that particular book, in History Lessons for the Modern Investor, is how our brains don't really work so well as modern investors. Our brains are not designed for the things that we ask them to do on a day-to-day basis, and that can trip us up if we're not careful. And 2008, great example.
Yeah, and right now what we're learning is, so that era passed, then we were starting to see productivity, lower prices on things.
Sure.
That's all changing again. Gas prices are on the rise. We're hearing nonstop about inflation.
As you should be.
Earning power, right, is not it's not matching up with what things cost. So what can we take from those good days and apply them to today so that we're not finding ourselves in a poor position?
I think the main lesson that I would point folks to is something that scientists figured out many years ago, looking at the heavens, right? They realized that some things were cyclical. Some comets came and went. Well, it's the same thing with the dismal science of economics. We also have some cyclicality. There's no telling when the cycle turns, really. But I think just understanding that this too shall pass, as somebody once said, is a key for investors, right?
Yeah.
They have to understand that cycles come and go, that whatever is happening now is not going to last forever, and they need to be prepared for the next phase, whatever that is.
Indeed. This is a great place to take a break. When we come back, Patrick, I want you to help us understand maybe some of the good places, the better places where we should be placing our money for the next, say, year, 2 years down the road. So why don't we do that after the break? We'll be right back. Welcome back on this Money Monday. We've been chatting with Patrick Huey. He is a financial advisor. He's also the author of 2 books, History Lessons for the Modern Investor and The 7 Pillars of Financial Wisdom. I want to talk about that book as well. But where would you recommend, Patrick, as we kind of hear the train coming down the track of inflation and all this kind of doom and gloom stuff, where would be a good place for people to put their money these days?
Well, I'll tell you, I'll answer your question by telling you the opposite, which is where I wouldn't put money. And I would be very careful of the bond market right now. The reason being, we've had this multi-generational period where bonds have done extremely well with the tailwind of decreasing interest rates. Well, interest rates have pretty well bottomed, and once they do that, they're either going to stay low or they're going to go up again. And that's going to be dangerous. And the problem is that we are so functionally fixated as investors. We think of one tool and want to use it the way that it's been used for generations all the time. And bonds are no exception. We think that they're going to provide us safety. We think that they're going to provide us a limited volatility and a decent return. And in the financial period to come, that's probably not going to be the case.
How about for those who don't have quite those deep pockets, if there would be one place that they should put their money, if they don't have too much to invest, where would you recommend?
Without going into specifics, because I can't for compliance reasons.
Sure.
But you know, I think in general, equity markets are going to do what equity markets do. They're going to be cyclical. You're going to have good times and bad. My concern is for the folks who think that they're gaining some sort of protection from that by having kind of the standard 60-40 stock to bond portfolio. They may have a lot less protection than they thought. So I would encourage them to take a look at that.
Okay. And just certain habits that people shouldn't find themselves practicing, taking on too much credit card debt.
Yeah.
People should be saving their money. Any other advice?
Yeah, I think the sooner you can start as an investor, the better. It's easier to learn the lessons early on because you're going to get some repetition as you go through these cycles. B, the power of compounding is an amazing thing. So start early. Invest early, invest often, to steal a phrase. Mm-hmm. But also, realize that your brain is not meant to do this. So recognize that you're going to come to this with some biases. Learn about those biases and do your best to combat them. One of the biggest things we see right now is the herd mentality.
Yes.
As equity markets continue to grind upwards, people get greedy. And now is not the time to be greedy. Now is the time to have a plan in place that you can live with for the rest of your life.
I want to go back to that idea of compounding because a wise person once told me that this is where you should be putting your money. This is how you watch money grow. Just in a nutshell, can you give us 30 seconds what that means and how to do it?
Sure. Compounding is nothing more than making money with money. So when you allow compounding to work for you, you're not just allowing your principal to work, you're letting the earnings work too. Those who frequent Las Vegas or the casino call it house money. Yeah. And anytime you can play with house money, you're going to be better off for it. So
and it just grows and grows and grows and grows.
Grows and grows and grows.
Finally, the 7 Pillars of Financial Wisdom, that is your other book. Can you give us just one of those pillars? Yeah,
you mentioned it at the beginning, which is the alphabet after people's names in our industry. Be very careful. Understand what you're getting when you hire a professional, and that book is really about how to get advice, where to get advice from, and my credentials may not be a match for everybody out there. The individual investor really needs to take a close look at who they are hiring to do this type of work for them, and if it is a fit, and not just their credentials, but their personality, their style, and their communication skills.
It takes a lot of trust, and you have to earn that trust. These people,
I would say so.
People work very hard for their money, and they want to make sure that they're putting it in the right hands.
But that trust is what gets me up in the morning, because there's nothing better than having a client say, I couldn't have done this without you. And that's a big one for me.
We're going to end on that note. Patrick, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're back after this.